The reality is, I have no cash. It's all tied up. So right now, if I wanted to call a taxi cab, I can't do it. I don't have a credit card. I don't have a checking account. I have no place I can go take cash out except a little bit that I saved, and it's getting down to almost nothing. I do not regret it for a minute. I regret the persecution that I've been put to.
And there you have it. The man once dubbed America's mayor, who led New York City in the aftermath of one of the worst terrorist attacks our country has ever seen, who became Donald Trump's personal lawyer after years of selling access to his 9/11 celebrity status, has now, according to him, been left impoverished. It is a clear case for all of those MAGA sycophants out there. This is what blind loyalty to Trump will get you. In the eternal words of Rick Wilson, everything Trump touches dies, including careers. As you may recall, Giuliani was ordered to pay nearly $150,000, $150 million to two Georgia election workers, Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss, whom he defamed while challenging the 2020 election results in their state. Yesterday's court hearing was held because lawyers for Freeman and Moss have claimed Giuliani has failed to turn over his assets as required by the courts. Suffice it to say that it was not a good day for Rudy, who lashed out at the judge in court, something he should know better than to do as a former U.S. attorney. He also appeared with new counsel as his original lawyer requested to be removed weeks ago due to a, quote, difference of opinion with Giuliani. Nowhere to be seen was Donald Trump, who has barely lifted a finger to help the man he called a great guy and a wonderful lawyer. In fact, Giuliani still claims that Trump and the RNC owe him $2 million, which he could really use right now. What Giuliani has been left with is being disbarred in both Washington, D.C. and New York as a result of his efforts to push Trump's big lie. And he is expected back in court in both places, in D.C. next month. He could be found in contempt of court for continuing to falsely accuse the two poll workers of having committed election fraud. And in January, he will face a trial in New York City over whether he will have to turn over other assets, his Florida home and his collection of 4 World Series rings to Ms. Freeman and Ms. Moss. And yet, Rudy says he does not regret a thing, not even for a minute. Joining me now is Catherine Christian, former Manhattan Assistant District Attorney and MSNBC legal analyst, and the Reverend Al Sharpton, president of the National Action Network and host of Politics Nation, and somebody who has had a long time adversarial relationship with Rudy Giuliani. So I'm going to go to you first, Rev. Rudy Giuliani seems to have been brought low, and yet he has asked the court to push his trial back in January so that he can attend Donald Trump's inauguration. The judge said no. His social calendar has nothing to do with his court cases. But that's how pathetic it is. Donald Trump owes him money, hasn't paid him. He's been destroyed for his support for Donald Trump's big lie, stripped of his mansion, stripped of his ring collection, and yet he's still a sycophant to Donald Trump. Please explain what is going on with this rather pathetic man.
It is rather pathetic to see the situation. But when you look at it in the broader context, Rudy Giuliani, who had a hostile relationship with the black community when he was mayor, police killings would happen. He'd show no empathy, no balance at all in what was being appealed to by the black community. And then you see him now with 2 black women, Ms. Shea and Ms. Moss, has brought him to accountability. But the real underlying story is that Donald Trump, who he was loyal to, has shown no loyalty to him, no statements, no tweets, nothing saying anything that he would back him up, which means all of the people that are in Washington now that are doing dances trying to get the anointing and blessings of Donald Trump should look at Rudy Giuliani and know that you can end up just as abandoned as Rudy Giuliani. If he would do this to Giuliani, what would he do to all of those that went around this country selling a bill of goods that he will not deliver on for people, no matter who they are, whether they're white in Appalachia or black in West Atlanta? He is one that only knows one thing, what is beneficial for Rudy Giuliani. For Donald Trump. Rudy Giuliani is the case example of the loyalty of Donald Trump is not reciprocal.
Right. And I mean, Catherine, I mean, it really goes across the board. Donald Trump has now had Jack Smith has withdrawn the cases against him, both for stealing classified documents and for attempting a coup to overthrow the government. But everyone else involved in those cases is still being charged. He could still wipe away Walt Nauta and the other gentleman's charge in Miami for having tried to help him steal those documents. But let's just go to the co-defendants in Georgia. Donald Trump was charged with 18 other people, including the head of Blacks for Trump, Harrison Floyd. They're all still being charged. 4 of them, Sidney Powell, Jenna Ellis, Kenneth Chesborough, and Scott Hall, already took plea deals. And then when you go to the classified documents case, Carlos de Oliveira and Walt Nauta, both still charged with hiding classified documents, including our nuclear secrets in Donald Trump's house, some in the bathroom. They're still charged. So, I mean, that is the lesson, right? Everyone around Donald Trump faces accountability, goes to prison. All those January 6th defendants, he skates through and forgets about them.
And he can do something with the 2 defendants on the classified documents case because they're federal crimes. He could pardon them. But Georgia, he can't help them in any way because it's a state crime. Rudy Giuliani, this is a civil case. He's a bankrupt, now disbarred attorney. And that's his life now. And Donald Trump can't pardon him for his defamation verdict. So, yes, as the Reverend Al said, and both Reverend Al and I are native New Yorkers, so we're very familiar with Rudy Giuliani. I mean, he was the U.S. attorney of what is supposed to be the premier U.S. attorney's office in the country, yep, and the mayor. And he's now, as I said, a disbarred, bankrupt person. And, you know, he is going to trial on January 16th. And of course, I mean, Donald Trump is not going to be there. And so this is what happens to people, unfortunately, who are in the Trump world. And we see what's happened to Rudy Giuliani.